Hey,
Hi,
welcome
everyone.
everyone.
Welcome. We are here today to talk about jealousy, and that is going to be a hot topic for so many of you, and it may be broader than you think.
Mm. Yes, I would love to hear from the ladies what they experience in the way of jealousy. How does that show up in your relationship?
Yeah, how
What
does
kind of things
jealousy
bring
show
up?
up? Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you to Julie who's helping to support us. We are live on all the platforms, and this is a public Facebook page, Instagram page, and YouTube page. So whatever you comment, be well aware that anybody can read that, but we would love to hear your feedback in the chat if you're willing. How does jealousy show up for you in your relationship?
Hi, Instagram friends. We're so glad you're here. Yeah, today we're talking about a really important topic because as I was preparing for this, and Susan and I were talking ahead of time, jealousy is a whole lot bigger than just he's jealous about other men. He's jealous that, I'm talking to the man at church, or he's jealous that I'm talking to my coworker at work, or those kind of things. How does his jealousy, I'm not talking about your jealousy, but you might have some associations to some things you do as well. How does his jealousy show up in your relationship? How does his jealousy show up in your relationship? And how do you handle it? How do you handle it? Because today we're going to be talking about more of your side of the street. How do you handle his jealousy? But first, let's get a descriptor of what that looks like for some of you. What does it look like for his jealousy to show up for you? What does that look like? Give us a description. We have some ideas, but you're here and you're the ones who are living it. And maybe it's not safe to write all that in the chat. I get that. So you might say something like, I have a friend whose husband does this. Is that jealous, or is that normal, or is that okay? I think it's hard to speak our own truth publicly, and that's totally fine. If you're going to have a question about this and you want to get it early to us, and you do not want to put it on the chat or in your Instagram, for example, if you want to send it anonymously, you just go to leslievernick.com/question/, and that'll bring up a banner that you can, a form that you can fill out your question, and then the person who checks those forms will put it in my computer so I can read it. All right, so for Robin, it says it shows up in relationship with the children. I'm so glad you said that, Robin, because as Susan and I were talking, it doesn't always show up in the obvious ways. He says he's being protective, but actually controlling. I'm a possession and not a person. It's unhealthy. It's not protective. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm going to teach you about what to say and how to deal with it. Stupid stuff, me petting the dog, my care over the kids, right? So any attention that's not directed toward him, he starts to feel angry and jealous over, right? If you're not 100% all over him all the time, you're petting the dog, you're taking care of your children, you're talking to your mom. It's not about necessarily other men. It's about you not being 100% always for him.
Yeah, but it could also show up in being accused of an affair, certainly being around men at work or having male friends and then getting accused of an inappropriate relationship with them. Absolutely.
Yeah, double standards for behavior. I'm not exactly sure how that fits into jealousy, other than maybe he can have friends and you can't, and he can talk to his family and you can't, and he can hang out with the dog and kids and you can't, and those might be double standards because of his jealousy. So how do you handle it? How do you handle his jealousy? Because it creates some problems for you, right? Like you're arguing, you're having to defend yourself all the time or explain yourself all the time. You're feeling stressed out. You're feeling scared, depending on what he does when he's jealous. How do you handle that jealousy? What are some of the things that you're doing to cope, to have boundaries, to talk, have conversations? What are you doing, or what are you not doing that is helpful or hurtful to you and maybe even to the relationship?
Great question. Take a pause for self-reflection. How do you handle that?
Yeah. So Rhonda says, my motives and my friends are negative and suspicious, but his motives and his friends are pure and good. Yeah.
Mm.
It sounds like a little projection here, that I'm projecting out of what's in me on you. But it's hard to deal with a person who's like that, right? Yeah. So how are you handling their jealousy? Because it causes a problem for you, right? It stresses you out, makes you explain yourself, defend yourself over and over and over again. And what do you do then? Oh, so explain to him that I'm the gatekeeper of my life. I don't need his assistance. And how does that go over? How does that go over with your spouse? I think it's a great thing to do. I think it's an important thing to do. What happens is then maybe it elevates your danger level or some women's danger level. And so that feels scary to do that for some women because it might escalate conflict, or it might escalate his anger, or it might escalate his, she's not well. It might escalate his acting out. So this is the dilemma, ladies, that you get into. We talked yesterday about healthy and unhealthy, right? So we can all agree that jealousy, like this kind of jealousy that we're talking about, is normal. But when it gets to a place where I'm trying to control other people to deal with my jealousy, it's unhealthy, right? It's unhealthy. And so it doesn't go well. And so then you start to get more and more unhealthy because you're trying to handle it in a healthy way. Hey, this is my decision to make whether or not I pet the dog, or I'm not saying anything negative about you because I love the dog because I love you too. And I love more than one thing, right? But if that creates safety issues for you, he escalates his anger, he threatens you, all of those kind of things, then it's harder to speak up for yourself, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even in that comment, he may make about the dog, you're always petting the dog. There's most likely a real conversation underneath that he's not saying, right? Indirectly, he's trying to poke you. But what he may be saying is, I want to spend more time with you. And he's not saying it well. He's not communicating that well. So it may be an issue of control, and it may be an issue of indirect and poor communication.
Mm-hmm. Or I want your hands all over me like you have your hands all over the dog.
Yes.
Right.
Uh-huh.
That
That's another way to say that. Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do think that for many of you who experience jealousy, that you are seen more as a possession than a person, right? And that's a problem. That's a problem because it's not true. But I do think that men in our culture and in our Christian culture are, and I feel sorry, I think men are miseducated as well as women on who we are and what we're for. Mm-hmm. I was reading an article about patriarchy in India, and I love studying different cultures and different times of like World War II history and stuff like that. So I was reading this article about patriarchy, and they're trying to get the rape law passed in India. And it's having a hard time because the men are saying, there are wives. You don't rape a wife. Your wife is yours to have. Why would you get married if you can't have sex anytime you want? So this is the mindset that I think men in certain cultures still have, including in Christian culture. Hey, if I can't have sex until I'm married, well, then marriage is for sex because I can do anything else I want to do. Not married, but I can't have sex. So if I can't have sex till I get married, then my marriage is for me to have sex. And so you have to be the possession in which I can have sex with, not the person that I want to connect with and love and have a relationship with, right? You own me. And I think there's a mindset that men, at least some men, enter into marriage that you do move into the possession role versus the person role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that sense of entitlement. It's heartbreaking.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. So what do you do? Some of you are saying, hey, you just live your life and let him deal with his problem. And that may be the best you can do, is say, hey, I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm petting the dog because I love the dog. I love you too. I'm spending time with my children because I love my children and my grandchildren. I'm not doing this to hurt you, and let them deal with their whatever they feel, their feelings of hurt or jealousy or loneliness. Because again, I think another thing that men tend to do is put all their eggs in your basket. Like, you're supposed to be my everything. You're supposed to be my companion. You're supposed to be my maid. You're supposed to be my mother. You're supposed to be my banker. You're supposed to be my cleaner. You're supposed to be everything to me. I don't have any other friends. And so you're wanting to hang out with your friends and your children and your grandchildren and your Bible study friends, and they're putting all of their social needs on you. And they're jealous that you're expanding yourself.
And not only that, but their emotional needs, right? If I feel jealous, if I feel neglected, then you need to fix that for me so I don't feel it.
Or
And I
lonely.
know a lot of women get into that trap of feeling like they do need to fix it. And they're selfish if they don't. And there's that sense of guilt of, I've caused him to have feelings that he doesn't like, and I need to make that go away for him. And I really think it is a trap. It's not true. He needs to learn how to manage his own feelings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So some of you are saying, I've learned to ignore him, and that's a good thing to do. How many of you have ever felt this? And maybe I talk to women who feel this more because I work full time and I have a ministry that's recognizable. And so people will come up to me and things like that. And so a lot of my friends who might be in this space have experienced some jealousy from their husbands. Like, oh, you're making more money than I'm making, or you're better liked than I'm liked, or you have more people who are following you than are following me, or the kids like you better than they like him, or the church is asking you to do things and they're not asking him to do things, or you've got gifts and talents and he doesn't have them, and so he puts you down or criticizes you for your abilities or your talents, and it makes you feel like I'm not allowed to shine. Like, I'm not allowed to shine. I'm not allowed to have my light shine, because it threatens him. It's not about another person who he's jealous of. He's actually jealous of me. And that's thankfully not my husband. But some of you have that situation where you aren't allowed to thrive, to shine, to be your best self, because it threatens him, because he isn't his best self. He isn't working to become his best self. And so his job is to tear you down or keep you small. How many of you have experienced that? And that's his job.
I can imagine it's a lot in this population, Leslie. So I'm glad that you put a voice to that. Yeah, look at Robin saying, that's me.
That's me. Yeah. And so what do you do? So I think this is the crux. We're going to be talking in our workshop next week. If he doesn't hit me, is it still abuse? I hope most of you here have probably already signed up, but if you haven't signed up, go to leslievernick.com/join workshop. leslievernick.com/join workshop. It's showing up really small at the bottom of the feed. I'm not sure why it's small today. It wasn't small before, but oh, here it is. Here's a bigger one. There we go.
There we go.
So leslievernick.com/join workshop. And that workshop, we're going to talk about, what does a wife do when her husband is scaring her or criticizing her or condemning her? Because typically the Christian woman has thought, wow, I need to keep building him up because he's supposed to be the head. He's supposed to be the leader. And so my leadership skills have to go underground. I have to die to myself as a leader. I have to deny my gifts and talents, because for me to shine makes him look or feel inadequate. And so I have to become less so that he can become more. And we spiritualize all of this. And neither one of us are shining, and both of us are languishing. And God isn't asking you, if you've been designed by him to be an oak tree, he's not asking you to wilt your limbs in order to be married, right? He's asking your husband to water you so that you become the biggest, boldest, most beautiful oak tree God made you to be. And vice versa. That's the point of marriage, right? So that you're better together than you would have ever been alone. Not that one of you gets to be strong and the other gets to be weak at that person's strength's expense. Not that they feed off of you so that they become strong.
Yeah, and I think this is a complicated issue because of what women have been taught, and really uncovering the lies to that and pulling out God's truth. And you've given us beautiful imagery, right, of being able to grow and thrive as that oak tree without needing to cause yourself to wilt so that he can get sunshine, right? Is that you can both help each other grow. Um, and I think that's a beautiful picture of what God designed, right? Not for the wife to make sure the husband can shine, but that both of them can shine.
And that they're both healthy so that they can help their children shine. Because
Yeah.
sometimes even a parent is jealous of their own children, right?
Yeah.
They're jealous of their um, abilities, and so they criticize them. Oh, you think you're all that? You're not all that. You're not as hot as you think you are. You're not as, smart as you think you are. You're really dumb, And this insecurity in a jealous person can make them cruel and harsh and scary. And so if
Mhm.
this is you and you're in this situation, what does God call you to do? What does God call you to do? Now, we're not going to have time to unpack all of that because we will also want to answer your questions, but we do have some things to share with you today. And I have a lot to share with you at the workshop about all of this, not just jealousy, but what does God call a woman who's being oppressed for whatever reason? Her husband's insecure, he's jealous, he's cruel, he's narcissistic, he's immature, he's, unhealthy, he's evil. From one degree to the other, what does a Christian woman, what is she called to do? What does
Mm.
it mean to be a good wife? What does it mean? Can you be a good wife and still have a horrible marriage? Yes. Can you be a good wife and still get divorced? Yes. What does it mean to be a good wife? So let's, Susan, share some of the ideas that you had about what does a woman do when she's in this situation with jealousy?
Mhm. I think one of the major pitfalls is getting defensive, right? That desire to defend yourself and over explain why he shouldn't be jealous. And I think the better approach to diffuse the situation is to come at it with empathy. And I mean holding your boundaries while you're giving empathy. So maybe just speaking into his experience. It sounds like it's really hard for you when I pet the dog or when I talk to my mom. And being able to kind of maybe even paraphrase what you're hearing him say. So, you wish that I wouldn't spend time with friends? Is that what you're saying to me? So, being able to hear him, I think, is really important, more important than defending your actions.
Right. You don't need to defend your actions. There's nothing wrong with them, right? But
Mm-hmm.
hearing them opens the possibility, no guarantee, opens the possibility of him self-reflecting as you
Mm-hmm.
ask those generous questions, curious questions. What about petting the dog bothers you? It
Mm-hmm.
gives him the opportunity to stop looking at you and start looking at him. I wonder what bothers me about that. Right? Now, your husband may not. He may turn it back on you. Oh, miss, what made you the therapist of me? Right? He may come back with a mocking remark. And now
Yeah.
you know, right? But then again, you don't know unless you try. So here's what you can do. You can try to be compassionate and kind without enabling his jealousy or his dysfunction or his unhealthiness to cause you to dim your light, right? You don't want to dim your light. That's not what God calls you to do. But you can have compassion for his brokenness in this area and ask a question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those clarifying, curious questions, I think, are really helpful. And that compassion is a big piece too. And knowing who you are. So that ability to self-reflect, what am I doing? Not so that you have a sense of guilt about it, but just so that you can make an assessment. Am I ignoring him? Am I overly focused on other relationships? And why is that? So you may be doing that for a very good reason. And so having some good support to help you sort through what your actions and your thoughts and feelings. You can do that through journaling. You can do that from a supportive group. I noticed Diana put in the chat that she's a member of Conquer, and she's been in Conquer for over a year. So if you're wondering what that is, it's an education and support group through Leslie Vernick and Company. And that's going to be opening up in a few weeks. So be watching for that. But that is a place to kind of find that support where you can learn and talk about these sort of issues and practice new skills.
Yeah, Conquer is only open for twice a year, and it'll be open after the webinar. We'll actually open the doors to Conquer if you're interested. We'll explain a little bit after the webinar what Conquer is if you'd like to be a part. But the workshop itself will be an hour long. I just counted last night. We have a 12-page workbook for you. So
wow.
This is dense. There's a lot of information in the workbook, a lot of information in the webinar about if he doesn't hit you, is it still abuse? Well, what else does they do that's abusive? What does it look like? And I'm not going to define gaslighting and jealousy, all the things that we've been talking about in the Facebook Live, all right? We're going to go a little deeper. Like oftentimes, for example, the first sign of a destructive, abusive relationship is that you're being isolated. Well, what do you do when your husband's always jealous of you? You stop hanging out with your mother so much. You stop hanging out with your friends so much. If he's jealous of you in your position at church, you start avoiding those things because you don't want to argue. You don't want to keep defending it. You don't want to keep explaining. So you just try to keep the peace. But as you're doing that by being more and more isolated, right? That is a red flag that this destructiveness is going to continue. So I'm going to give you some other red flags in the workshop that really will help you to recognize when it doesn't look like, oh, it just looks like we're leaving and cleaving. It just looks like we're trying to be a couple. It just looks like we're trying to repair our marriage. And yet there's an underbelly of something really sinister here in this isolation. That's what cults use, right? So that you have less support, you have less information to make different decisions, and you start to think like if you read conspiracy theories all day long, you're going to start to believe them, right? The only thing that helps you not is you have other people who are saying, that's crazy, right? But when you're isolated, you don't have those other people who are saying, that's crazy. So come to the workshop next week. It's at noon at Eastern time, same time as this session, as well as 7:30. So we're doing 2 live sessions. I will be teaching for an hour. There's a downloadable workbook that you can take notes on. You can fill in. There's some reflection questions, just like Susan asked that curious question that you all put in the chat. Wow, that's a great reflection question. We have these questions in your workbook for you to say, why am I allowing this to happen? What's going on with me that I'm letting myself be boiled in water, so to speak. And so that will help you. And then at the end, we will give you an invitation to join Conquer if you're interested in that, if that's something that you need. But please, if this is you and you're in a destructive, or you think you might be in a destructive marriage, but you can't define it, it's hard to define, then come to the workshop and I'll help you define it. So especially if you need some support, so that you can define that to your pastor, you can define it to your counselor, you can define it to your parents if you need to, or whoever you need to get the support that you're going to need to take different steps than you're taking right now.
Mm-hmm. So Leslie, Norma's asking, do they get the workshop or the workbook at the time of the workshop or when they register?
I'm not done quite with it yet. So if you register, people have been registering. We have over 3,000 people registered, so they haven't gotten it yet. But a day before the workshop, like Monday, you'll get an email saying, here's a link to your workbook, download it. All right. And then the day of the workshop, it'll say, hey, workshop starts in 30 minutes. Here's your link for the workshop. Here's your link to download the workbook. So you can do either one of those. And if you totally forget and you show up at the workshop and you say, oh my gosh, I forgot to download the workbook, at the top of the chat in the workshop, it'll say, here's the link to download the workbook. So you can still download the workbook and print it. You can print it, or you can just keep it on your phone or keep it on your computer, save it to your whatever you want to do. It's yours to keep, and it's thorough. And one of the things that, because I only want to talk for an hour, not talk for 5 hours, which I could teach this topic for 5 hours. There's so much to talk about, but I didn't. I only kept it to less than an hour. So in your workbook, there are a whole lot more Bible verses in your workbook than I'm going to be able to talk about specifically in the workshop. Otherwise, we could just talk about Bible verses for a whole hour on what does God say about emotional abuse. Have you ever heard someone say in your church, there is no such thing as emotional abuse in the Bible? It's not true. But sometimes we're not literate. Where is it in the Bible? So I've put all that in the Bible, or headship and submission. Hey, it's not defined as your husband's defining it. Well, where is that in the Bible? I've put all that in the workbook so that you will have tools to do your own research later so that you can check out what I'm saying and see what God has to say to you about what your situation is.
Mm. And this is a free workshop, but you do have to register. In case you're confused about that. I see a question in the chat.
Yeah. So for those of you on Instagram, we're talking about the workshop next week, Tuesday at noon Eastern time or 7:30. And you can register and find out some more about it at leslievernick.com/join workshop. All one word, no space, join workshop. All right. So let's go to some questions about what jealousy is or what to do with it. So I'll read the first one, Susan. I performed songs with a male vocalist in a show, and my husband was furious. He wrote a letter to the guy accusing him of all sorts of things. Prior to this, my husband, and all during our marriage of almost 30 years, he's been involved in watching porn and struggles with anger issues. Everything came to a head because I had just lived with the shame in all of our marriage and forgave every time and understood. I vowed to stay in this marriage forever. After he sent this letter, all issues from the past that I had packed away resurfaced. And now I'm facing it all and trying to work through it. I had been in counseling for a while. My husband had about 4 or 5 sessions privately, and we've had about 5 together. And he states he's not going back to counseling, saying he has repented and God forgave him, which I believe that God does forgive when you repent. He is telling me that we need to move forward and put it all behind us. I'm struggling. I'm in a wonderful counseling. I've read Leslie's book, The Emotionally Destructive Marriage, and Lisa Turker's Good Boundary Goodbyes. Listened to all the podcasts of Lisa and Leslie's. My counselor suggested the books, which I've already read. I'm thankful. I signed up for the webinar. This is a long message. I'm saying it might put others to what, but I'm trying to stay as anonymous as I can. So you're not really asking a question, but you're just making a comment. But let me just say one thing about what you said. Your husband said, I'm not going back to counseling, and let's just put this behind us. Mm. Okay. That statement, for those of you who have husbands who say things like that, that's a red flag. What that's saying to you is, I am uninterested in any more personal growth or development. I'm uninterested in having someone help me become a better man. And I don't want you to talk about this anymore. So you're not allowed to continue to talk about the 30-year impact my porn use has had on you. You're not allowed to talk to me about how my letter to this colleague of yours humiliated you or, embarrassed you or hurt the other person. We're done with all of that because I say so. Mm-hmm. That's what it's saying to you. So in light of all that, what does repentance look like? Right? Because repentance is, hey, I am not only willing to stop doing what I'm doing, I'm willing to start doing something new. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to grow. I'm willing to be the man that God wanted me to be. I don't hear that. I hear maybe an apology, but I hear done, over with, no more discussion. Is that really repentance? Is that how Paul repented? Is that how Peter repented when he messed up? I mean, we all mess up for sure. So these are the things that we want to teach you to pay attention to. Our words matter, but our actions matter more. And his words and his actions are matching, and they don't look good for a future healthy marriage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the things that I notice about people who have truly recovered from destructive behaviors is they have a willingness to self-reflect and address the harm that they've caused. They don't shut you out, and as many times as you need to talk about it, they're willing to say, I did do that to you, and I'm so sorry. This is how I want to be going forward. They don't say, now it's time to stop talking about it. I'm no longer willing. They're open. They are willing to look at the harm they've caused again and again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're coming to the workshop next week, and just take our words and noodle them for a couple of days and pray about what your next steps are forward. Are we saying that if my husband calls me stupid or says I'm fat and ugly, it's because he's jealous of me? He has overheard people in the past, early stages of the relationship, say that I could do much better than him. He slowly turned out to be very secretively, verbally, and emotionally abusive man who's very indifferent to me.
Mm-hmm. I don't think we can say that definitively, but we're suggesting that could be a possibility. And it might be beneficial for you to ask some curious questions so that you can get to the root of why is he saying things like that to you?
Suggest a couple because people find those really helpful. And this is recorded. So if you can't write fast enough, you can always go back into the Facebook page. You'll get if you're on our email list, you will get an email tomorrow that says, here's the Facebook live that we just did. And it's a link right there. You can watch it in our email. So if you're not on our email list, go to my website and just sign up for our email list so that you get those replays.
Mm-hmm. In this instance, I might just repeat back what he's saying. So what you're saying to me is you think I'm fat and ugly. What is your goal in telling that to me right now? What are you trying to convey to me in saying that? And I think it takes some reflection of yourself and that ability to take a pause, because I imagine when you hear that, there's some big emotions that come up.
Would
There's
be for me if someone said that.
Yes, an intense emotional reaction, and in order to have a conversation about it, first you're going to be able to need to settle yourself and your nervous system. And so I think the key is taking a breath and saying, okay, this is about him. This isn't about me. You get to decide how you look, right? That is for you to decide. And if he has a reaction to that, that's about him. And so once you've settled yourself, you might be able to repeat back what you just heard him say and then ask him to clarify.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Leslie?
I think that takes a tremendous amount of self-presence and courage, because especially if you feel fat and ugly, if you don't feel fat and ugly, it's easier to come at that with those kind of curious questions. But if he triggers something in you that is triggering, so something about your beauty and your strength is triggering his insecurity, right? And maybe the comments early in your marriage that you could have done better than him, have always triggered him into trying to make you at his level, put you down so that you don't get more important than him, or more that your light doesn't shine brighter than his. And so that was kind of the comment that he heard. Hey, you could do better than that. His light isn't as shiny as yours, or his abilities don't match yours, or all those kind of things. And so that's been a hurt for him early in the marriage. Imagine someone saying to your husband, you could have done a whole lot better than marrying her. I mean, that's a hurtful remark, right? So he's had to live with that hurtful remark. And instead of dealing with it in a healthy way and talking about it and moving beyond it, he's let that gnaw at him. And in order to deal with his feelings, he wants to lower you down to his level. So I think it's going to trigger both of your feelings, but I think this is a wonderful, beautiful opportunity. Yesterday, we talked about two unhealthy people could never make a healthy relationship. So here's where you stop working on the relationship and you just work on you, and he has an opportunity to work on him. And if this is triggering you, do some work to calm down and to say, like Susan said, and that's a pretty cutting remark. What are you trying to say to me? Or, hey, that really stings when you say things like that. What's your point? What is it you're trying to say to me? And to see if he has an opportunity to be reflective. I wouldn't do it over and over again if he shuts you down, or if he makes fun of you, or if he mocks you for doing it. That's when Jesus says, stop casting your pearls before swine, right? Because they will turn and mock you. So once you've tried it and it blows up and goes south, it's not like you keep doing it over and over again, but it's a new way of behaving in a relationship to see if he can figure out a new way of responding. Yeah. To start a different dance together.
Yeah. So if you start with that, you may want to switch gears and let him know, I'm not responding to comments like that anymore. And then hold yourself to that boundary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's so interesting because, someone who thinks those things of you, if they really thought, they wouldn't want to be with you, right? So it's like, why would you want to be with me if that's what you think of me? Right. So this is an interesting comment to say your husband's putting you down. You're so mean. You're so, you're deceitful. You're lying to me. You never care about me. And I might just say, wow, if you really think that about me, why are you still here? Right? Why are you still here? And again, that's a reflection question that invites him to be curious about what's really going on inside of him. And my experience with Narcissistic, evil people is they will gaslight you and they will not want to look within.
Mhm.
However, sometimes immature, hurt people will look within, right? So people who have been hurt, deeply hurt, and are not mature and handling themselves inappropriately might not do it in that moment, but might later come back to you and said, I thought about what you said. Right. And so it behooves you as his wife. What is a good wife? A good wife speaks the truth in love. A good wife doesn't cover over her husband's sin, but she doesn't rub his nose in it either. She speaks the truth in love, right? Giving him an opportunity to self-reflect. If you saw your husband with a zipper down in public, I'm sure you would say your zipper's down. And hopefully he would pull it up. You wouldn't pull his zipper up for him. That's his job to do. That would be embarrassing, even for a 4-year-old. But you would inform him that there's a problem here, and it's up to him to reflect and fix it.
Mhm.
Okay. So this question, how can I ask these curious questions if his jealousy is covert?
So I think it's pretty rare that a man will say, I'm jealous of you, right? Or I'm jealous of the time you're spending with your mom. So I think it's almost always covert, and it comes in these biting comments or these slights. So what you're addressing is the behavior or the comments, right? And not going to the word directly. I can see that you're jealous of me, right? You wouldn't say that, but you might comment like the previous question is, it sounds like you make a lot of fun of me for being fat. What is your point in doing that? Right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not dealing with a jealousy specifically, but you're dealing with a comment.
You know, my sister did that once. It was interesting. We have a family, just a family that tends to use sarcasm and cut downs in order to connect. It's a bad quality in our family, but it's across the board. So my sister had just had twins, and she hadn't lost all of her baby weight, and she probably would never lose all of her baby weight. And so my uncle, who hadn't seen her for a long time, they were together at a family gathering. And so he said, oh, hi, looks like you put on a few. That was his way of greeting her. And she said to him, I haven't seen you in 5 years. Is that the best thing you could say to me?
Hmm.
So she asked a curious question. And he, to his credit, reflected and he said, you're right. That was the stupidest thing. I should have never said that. I am so sorry. But had she not had the courage to say that, he would not have had the opportunity to grow. Right? And our family still does that. From time to time, the male members in our family, it's the males who do it, say stupid things at times. They're much better at it. My 80-year-old father, now he's 94, but when he was 80, I was at his house and I was eating some cookies. And he said to me, sure you need those extra cookies? And I'm like, Dad, like I'm a grown-up for a long time now. I can decide what I need to eat at this point. Right? And he has never said it to me again. So I think there are times that we can say that to people who have been schooled in a certain way of being that may be cutting and hurtful, and they don't intend for it to be that way. So when you say, what did you intend by this remark? Or is this the best thing you could say to me right now? You'll be able to tell by their response whether it's possible for you to continue a relationship with this person or not. So if my uncle had said to my sister, well, it's true, you have gotten fat, right? She probably would have not chosen to have any more conversations with him or been in his company, right? Just because it's mean. When you're married to someone like that, it's even harder, but at least give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
If a husband has repented and apologized, isn't it wrong to keep bringing it up?
Great question.
Yeah. You want to start?
So yeah, I'll be happy to start with that. I think it's wrong to keep harping on it for no reason. So what I would ask you is, what current reason would you have for bringing it up? So oftentimes when we're hurt, the hurt doesn't just go away when the apology happens. And so if there's a time presently that you feel hurt by it, I think it's okay to talk about it, to see how he responds, right? This is how it's affecting me today. So you're not going back in history just to dredge it up, to humiliate, or to remind him of his faults. But if you're currently struggling for some reason, like something similar has happened, right? He's made a comment to you that was similar to that, and it's bringing up big feelings for you. And you're wondering, hey, is that the old pattern surfacing again? I think it's okay to bring that up and say, hey, you used to do this before, and I'm sort of seeing it again, and this is how I'm feeling. So I think there are healthy ways to bring it up, and there are unhealthy ways to bring it up.
And I think there's sometimes consequences of sin that are long lasting, whether they're physical consequences. So let's say he had an affair and you have an STD and you're still struggling with this STD, and you've forgiven him and he's sorry and he's truly repentant. And every time you have to take your pill or whatever you have to do for an STD, you feel a little upset, right? And you might sometimes want to talk about that. Or let's say he's bankrupted you because he's been foolish in gambling or having these dreams that he wants to pursue and has taken out a second mortgage, and now you're bankrupt and you have to move, and you've forgiven him and the consequences are real. And you're having to leave your home and you having to move away and you're crying, and you have real feelings in the here and now about the consequences of that sin that is still lingering. Or maybe he's done something that's damaged your body. I tell a story in my book about a woman who was in a car accident after her husband road raged. And every time she just didn't drive with him for a long time, and they're trying to rebuild trust in their driving. And every time he starts to drive or gets a little ticked off at a driver, she reacts, and he doesn't shame her for that. He says, I don't want to ever scare you again when I drive. I'll calm down. I'll slow down. If you want to drive, you can drive. That reassures her continuously that he has repented. He doesn't want to do this again. That's part of rebuilding trust. And so I think there are times when you'd have to talk about it, because it's not the issue anymore. It's the impact. How did this impact me? It's still happening. Mm-hmm. My body is still hurt. My emotions are still hurt. I'm still struggling with the aftermath of what you did in our finances and our home and our sex life and in my body and my emotions. And I need you to hear that this didn't just go away because you're sorry. This is still here in me, in my body, in my memory, and I need to process that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if that's not allowed, then what he's saying to you, and we'll talk about this in the webinar, in the workshop, so be sure to come. He's deflecting, and he's saying in his mind, my feelings are more important than your feelings. So my feelings of shame and hurt when you bring it up are more important than your feelings of pain and sadness about what I did. So we're not talking about it again, because my feelings always trump. And if that's been the pattern in your relationship, that's a very narcissistic pattern, right? That my needs, my feelings, my ideas are always more important than yours. What is it? Where does that leave you in the marriage? It leaves you as the role, the wife. It doesn't put you at an equal status of I'm a person too. I have feelings and needs too. And your needs don't always come first. But there's been some Christian teaching that have sort of said, well, he's the husband, so he always gets to come first. And that's not biblical at all. And I'm going to unpack that at the workshop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the next question, I chose to leave. Is there a way to have an abusive person apologize ever?
If they want to apologize, I'm sure they can find a way, right? That's not your call to make them apologize. I mean, even when we make our kids apologize, sorry, it's not from the heart. It's not from the heart, right? So in AA, they talk about apology, making amends for the harm you've caused. unless it would cause more harm to do that. So sometimes in AA, people will go back to people they've harmed, date raped, other things. And sometimes they don't because they think it might stir up more memories and harm too. So I think their need to apologize to you is their call. Your need for them to apologize to you, I think, is legitimate, but you may never get that, right? Just like Jesus would love all of us to say, I am so sorry, Lord, I've sinned against you. He's not going to get that from most people, and he doesn't twist our arm for it. He waits till we get it. We're genuinely sorry, right? So I think after the relationship is over, or someone's consequences, I've done something horrible and I'm in jail, and can I still apologize? Of course you can. It doesn't take you out of jail. Doesn't eliminate the consequences, but of course you can apologize. So the divorce might be real, the marriage is dead, and he could still apologize for killing the marriage.
Yeah. But I think what you may be asking is, are there ways to make him apologize? Right? And the answer to that is no, is you certainly can't make somebody, especially an adult. You might convince a child that they have to. But again, like Leslie said, it's not from the heart, even if you make them apologize. And that's hard. When you don't get an apology to move on with life, it can be done though. You can work through it with God in order to forgive, even if they haven't apologized. And that's for your benefit, not theirs.
Yeah. And Jesus tells us this in Matthew 18. He says, if your brother or sister, so this is a relationship you have, if your brother or sister or husband or wife sins against you, which is going to happen because we're imperfect sinners, right? Go to them, talk to them. If they hear you, then he will apologize, you will reconcile the relationship. If they refuse to hear you, then escalate the matter to the church or people who can help. So you don't hide this, you don't keep it a secret if it's a serious thing, and help that person see their wrongness. And if they still refuse to listen, they're not listening, they're not hearing, la, 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 I'm not hearing you, I don't want to apologize, nothing wrong with me, right? All of that. Jesus says the relationship changes. So treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector, which Jesus knew in Jewish culture was they're strangers, that you don't trust them. You don't be intimate with them. It's not like you abuse them, but you don't trust them or kiss them. You're not close to them. And that's the consequence of sin. And I think the church has been very anemic in talking about that in the relationship of marriage, because marriage has been so sacred, and it is sacred. It is sacred. We don't divorce for trivial reasons. But when someone has broken covenant again and again and again, in whatever ways, they've been unfaithful to their vows. They don't love, cherish, protect. They're not honest. Over and over and over again. How do you stay married to someone like that? You can't. You can't trust them. You don't feel safe with them. And we'll talk all about that at the workshop.
Mm-hmm.
What are boundaries? I've been wanting to learn.
It's a big question. But we did mention boundaries because this is important when you're dealing with somebody who's jealous of you, so that you know who you are and who you're not, right? They're basically the limits on your sense of self, and you get to define those. So what you will do, what you won't do, who you are and who you're not, what you like, what you don't like, what you're responsible for and what you're not responsible for. It's really putting words to defining who you are as a person, your limits, where you end and somebody else begins.
Yeah. So let's just put it in real concrete terms. My house has boundaries, walls, locks, fences, right? It's not that people can't come in my house, but I decide when they come in, right? I decide how I want to decorate my house. Or we decide if you're with another person. But basically, I express my opinion. Oh, I like this. Don't like this. I want this. I don't want that. If you come into my house and I didn't invite you into my house and you just walk in, I'm not going to be happy. I'm not responsible to clean my neighbor's house. My neighbor has a house too. I am responsible to clean my house. Now, if my neighbor got sick and they called me up and said, "Hey, Leslie, I need your help. Can you come and help me do my laundry?" I would be happy to help them, but I'm not responsible for their laundry or their house or their yard, right? I'm responsible for my house, my laundry, my yard. That's how boundaries are psychologically, that it's not about you. It's not about I'm putting a fence to keep you out. It's about I'm going to put a fence on my house because I feel safer with a fence.
Mhm.
I like to have my dog contained in the fence. I can do this better when I have a fence, right? It's not about what you can do and if you jump over my fence or you come in my house uninvited, there will be a consequence. I will call the police. I will lock my door and not leave it open anymore. I will move away. I will do different things in order to make sure that my safety is secure. I can't control you jumping over my fence, right? So that's what a boundary is in essence. It's something you can control that defines you, what you're responsible for, what you're not responsible for, who you are, who you're not, what you like, what you don't like. And that's your work to do.
Mhm. And I love that you said it's about safety. It's about safety and freedom. It's not about restriction and consequences. It's about safety and freedom
Mhm.
for yourself.
And for others, I respect my
Mhm.
neighbor's house. I don't just go barging in her house. I knock. It's Leslie, can I come in? Right? So she might have her door unlocked, but I'm not just opening the door. But in some cultures, that's totally fine. And with some families, it's totally fine. Right? And some families, it's not. So you get to decide. My bathroom door is going to be locked. Right? My kids are not coming in when I'm peeing, So other people are like totally fine. The whole family can come in while I'm peeing. Right? And I'm not judging that. I'm just saying you get to decide what's okay with you and what's not okay with you. All right. Where are we in time? Okay, let's go to the next question. What if I'm the one who's historically been jealous in my marriage, more out of fear of abandonment than desire for control? I'm aware of and initiated my own counseling for that and other personal concerns. My husband has been physical with hitting and slapping, one episode of holding me down with his fist in my mouth. People from church have told us it's mutual abuse because I've been physical and verbally aggressive too, name calling. I have poured water on him, flipped him off, but I have not hit or slapped. I'm aware of all my behaviors are likely reactive abuse, and I am seeking biblical counseling to work on them. However, my husband, now separated, has not sought accountability or counseling until asked to by church staff. So I'm not sure of the question. You've given a lot of information, and I'm really glad that you're seeing you're unhealthy in your own ways, right? In your own ways, even in reacting to hurt and harm, we're unhealthy ways. And let me just say this to you ladies who are listening. If you're reacting to your husband's control over you in abusive ways, I'll just give you an example. Let's say he's restricting you because he doesn't want you to go out with your friends. And so he doesn't want you, and so he's holding the car keys. That's abusive control over you. You could call 911 or you could call the police and say, my husband won't let me out of the house, and they will come and help you. However, if you try to grab the keys out of his hand and end up scratching his face with the key, he can call the police and have you arrested for abuse.
Mhm.
So how you handle yourself matters. It matters legally. It matters to the children, because if you are flipping him the bird and your kids see that, he's going to say to them, look at mommy. She says she's a Christian, but look what she just did to daddy. She's a bad mommy. She's a bad Christian. Don't listen to her. That's how they start to alienate your children from you and start siding with him. So this is so important that you educate yourself about this stuff, and Conquer will help you. Our webinar will help you, because I'm so glad she asked that question. You can see that we're sometimes unhealthy ourselves in different ways, and we're reacting to their unhealthiness in our own unhealthy ways. Just like if your husband's jealous and you just blow my light out because that'll keep him happy. That's an unhealthy way of reacting to his jealousy, is by compliance, by snuffing your own light and staying small so he doesn't get threatened. That's the most unhealthy thing you could do. But so many Christian women believe that's the godly thing to do, and it's not. And so we want you to say, hey, I may not fix him. I may not be able to control him. I may not be able to stop him, but I've got to get healthy because my children need at least one healthy parent. And that's what God calls me to. He calls me to grow and let my light shine in a good way.
Yeah. 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 And it's so sad when it gets defined as mutual abuse, right? Is that the playing fields get leveled and then he doesn't actually recognize his own abuse. He really doesn't have anything pointed at him. But ladies, when you can regulate yourself and resist grabbing the keys, scratching him, flipping him the bird, that's the best opportunity for him to say, wow, I'm doing all these things. I have a problem. But when he can say, hey, we both do it. This is an unhealthy thing. And that's what your church is seeing too. You both do it. They're not seeing it as a problem with him. They see it as a problem with you.
So one of the questions that I ask counselors when I'm teaching counselors and pastors to look for in this kind of situation is who holds the most power? So men hold more physical power. In biblically based Christian homes, men hold more spiritual power because they're the head, they're the leader. They hold usually more financial power, right? And their voice is louder. And so verbally, we can probably outtalk them. And so verbal abuse can be a little bit, we can be powerful that way too. But understand that usually the man in the culture and in the home holds more power. So even if it looks like mutual abuse, if a big guy is trying to rape a little woman and she's fighting against him, he's going to win. He's going to win, right? Because he's bigger, stronger, more powerful. And if they go to court and he's got a lot of money and he's got a lot of status, he's going to win, right? That's how it goes. And so we need to understand that we have to always look at who holds more power in the relationship. And it's usually in our culture, the man, because of patriarchy and other things. And we're going to talk about this power over in the webinar. And what does the Bible say about this? Because we have been taught that it is biblical, that patriarchy is biblical, that the head of the household should be men. That's not how God designed it. And I'm going to unpack that a little bit for you with all the Bible verses for you to look at in the workshop. So please, please sign up and attend live. Because if you don't attend live, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get me talking for an hour with your workbook, which is valuable. But you're going to miss the chat, and you can see how valuable the chat is here. And you're going to miss the community of connecting with other women. And that you need to get healthy. So we're going to wrap up because we're 3 minutes out from an hour and we want to stay on time. So what's been your takeaway from today? We've always been asking you these questions so that you can write something down, get your pen, write something down that God is telling you today about what you heard that you might need to do differently. Maybe it's that you need to get more healthy. Maybe it's that you need to set a boundary. Maybe what have you heard that God is speaking to you? I'm speaking, Susan's speaking, but what is the Holy Spirit saying to you? They're putting their finger on something that you need as a takeaway. What was it from today? What was it? I have power, Kathy says. Yeah, I have power. What have you heard today? I have so many questions. Heather, I encourage you to sign up for the workshop because we're going to answer your questions. We'll stay afterwards and answer them. And that's a private space that you don't have to feel afraid of putting them in there. And they don't go on the replay because we don't want to violate your privacy. So the questions you'll miss. If you get the replay, you don't get that. So you get the chat, you get the community, and you get the Q&A time. And that's not recorded. We don't record that for sending out with the webinar because we want you to feel safe to say whatever you want to say, and it's not going to everybody's email who signed up. It's only the people who are live who have attended. Okay? Name doesn't show up on the question, and I don't ask by name. I just read your question. Okay? Yeah, to get healthy and set some boundaries. Boundaries. You are someone special in God, and you are loved. I can write myself a letter of apology. So true about boundaries, creative safety, freedom, respect. I love this concept, sending love. How do I handle my husband's jealousy? Wonderful, wonderful. Great
takeaways.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of this. Our next workshop will be on Monday, and we are going to talk about, let me just read it here. It'll be on Monday, April 8th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Can a godly wife say no? to her husband? Can a godly wife say, no way, Jose? Can she say that? Or does she always have to say yes? We're going to answer that question for you next Tuesday, the day before our workshop. So please sign up for the workshop at leslievernick.com/join workshop. And we'll see you Monday. God bless. Bye-bye.
So good to be with you, Leslie. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Susan.